Up next, we shift gears to explore how doctrines themselves are in transition, preparing India's armed forces for the realities of multi-domain conflict. This session will explore how the Indian armed forces are adapting to the realities of multi-domain warfare, integrating technology, intelligence, and jointness to ensure readiness across every front. Who better to deliver the keynote address than the Chief of Army Staff, General Upendra Dwivedi? Sir, thank you so much for coming and taking out the time. May I also request our moderator and the panelists to come up on stage. Moderator, Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, Editor-in-Chief, Chakra News. Our panelists, Mr. Ashok Atluri, Chairman and Managing Director, Zen Technologies. Mr. Ashish Kansal, Director and CEO, SMPP Limited. And Mr. Sarjan Shah, MD India of Shield AI. May I request all of you to please come up on stage, and I request the Chief of Army Staff to please deliver the keynote address. Yeah. I request our moderator and panelists to please come up on stage. Remove one chair from the side. I know that, so I'm saying, is it possible to remove it? I'm asking. Sir, may I please request you to deliver the keynote address? Can I have a round of applause, please? General Upendra Dwivedi.
Shri Nitin Gokhale, distinguished panelists, officers and veterans, distinguished members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. And after 2 o'clock, generally the graph keeps going down. And I'm told there's no break also before this, but after this I'm told there's a tea break. So that's a good encouragement. So to begin with, great to see that how the India Defense Conclave is bringing together military leaders, industry pioneers, innovators, and policymakers. And as it completes a decade, its expanding scale and influence mirror India's emergence as a confident and credible voice in global security affairs. I personally also complete my association with Nitin, because I remember similar time frame I met him in Army War College when we used to conduct the exercise together. Oh, great to see Air Chief Marshal, sir. I thought you had gone out, so I didn't address you. So to continue with this story, amid this dynamic exchange of ideas, the theme of my talk today is future warfighting, concept to capabilities. Now, how it becomes important, because this is turning vision into value, means walking the path from concept to capability. And if you look into it, it embodies two inseparable dimensions. First, the evolving form of the warfare, and second, the conversion of emerging operational concepts into credible and decisive capabilities. Basically, it means bridging imagination with implementation. So the canvas is very big. I'll try and keep it small. So let me first dwell on the first pillar of our theme, form and domains of warfare. And as B.H. Littlehart observes, the profoundest truth of war is that its forms are never constant. So if we, for instance, consider the age of sail and empire, also referred to as age of colonialism, naval power was the foremost symbol of strength. By mid-20th century, the two world wars shifted the center of gravity skyward, where air power emerged as a significant instrument influencing the tempo and reach of operations across theaters. And of course, Normandy landing made sure all three come together, which saw a massive coordinated air, sea, and of course the land invasion in 1944. So in our time, the form of warfare itself becomes so fluid that conflict is no longer bounded by the battlefields, is diffused, dispersed, and pervasive. And Russian General Valery Gerasimov observed that modern wars now follow a ratio of 4:1 for non-military to military actions. The essence of hybrid warfare which we are witnessing today. So when we talk about this strategic partnership, we are looking at long-term manufacturing and that guaranteed support. The issue will always remain that we may give the guaranteed support, but the requirement of that particular equipment may no longer exist after 5 to 7 years. So that also has to be understood by all of us. So yet, amid all these trends of warfare, one factor always remains constant. That is, land remains the currency of victory. Other domains operations may destroy or disrupt, but in Indian context, land domain looks at destruction, eviction, occupation, and control. The outcomes that are physical, political, and psychological. You have seen the negotiations in Ukraine and Gaza, which reinforce the importance of the same. So if wars keep changing in form, the next question is, how do nations or militaries translate evolving ideas into real war-fighting capabilities? And as Clausewitz observed, everything in war is very simple, but the simplest thing is difficult. The actualization of war-fighting capability is a complex and cumulative process, a continuum of conceptualization, experimentation, development, and acquisition, and it demands 3 T's, thought, technology, and tenacity. Let's take example of main battle tank. Conceived to restore mobility in static trench warfare, needed 2 decades of sustained design, experimentation, doctrinal evolution. Only then it emerged as the defining instruments of maneuver on land. Closer home, India's guided missile program flagship, the Agni missile system, reflects how a strategic idea matured into enduring capability. Envisioned in the 80s as a pillar of credible deterrence, it evolved through indigenous research, scientific rigor, and sustained national resolve into a family of long-range precision systems that safeguard India's strategic autonomy. So the history of warfare shows that while ideas may be conceived within the military, their realization extends far beyond it. An honorable Prime Minister during the Combined Commanders Conference September 25 encapsulated this spirit when he gave the mantra of Jai, that is jointness, that integrates our effort, Atmanirbharta, empowers our capability, and innovation transforms ideas into action. So what are the enduring essentials that make the mantra translate into credible warfare capabilities? I'll just list out 5 or 6 of them. And the first would be the intent, which is the catalyst of capability. So do we in India have it? The answer is yes. In abundance. Our earlier nuclear program, space program, missile program, the recent chip manufacturing initiative are all evidences of strong intent. In the defense budget for financial year 25-26, rupees 1.8 lakh crore, that's approximately 26% is allocated to capital outlay. These investments reflect not just numbers, but a national intent to stimulate and catalyze the growth of a cross-domain Atmanirbharta ecosystem. So the intent must also be cognitive with longevity. It means whatever intent we have promulgated, it should have a longevity like we have our decade of transformation 2032. And be ready to accept change, make new structures, and overcome preconceptions. The second is the ecosystem. The enabler of efficiency. If intent sets the direction, it's the ecosystem that delivers the outcome. An ecosystem in the context of capability development is the framework of reforms that turn strategic intent into executable strength. The year of reforms 2025 launched by the Honorable Raksha Mantri, makes a decisive step towards aligning defense process with the national vision of Atmanirbharta. Under its aegis, the Defense Acquisition Procedure, that is DAP 2020, is being comprehensively revised. And the biggest advantage is that at this point of time, we are ready to change. Since it is part of the year of reforms, every suggestion which is there is a welcome change. It is being discussed and it is being incorporated. The new Defense Procurement Manual, DPM 2025, has already been released, and it aimed at simplifying and accelerating acquisition procedures while ensuring ease of doing business. And to promulgate and kind of enlighten everyone, there is a seminar also planned in due future where the financial advisors, the industry, academia, and everybody gets to know that how these two major documents are going to make the change. The third would be the research and development. The engine of evolution, if the ecosystem defines the environment, R&D outlines its edges. Since IDEX and everything would have already been discussed, I'll not cover that. I'll just say that industry must invest in emerging technologies, AI, cyber quantum, unmanned autonomous system, space and advanced materials. Not only to meet future operational needs, but also to power India's manufacturing growth and defense exports. The proof is visible in indigenous systems like the Akash AD, ATAC guns and light tank Zorawar. And what we are looking at, a full automation and manned-unmanned teams, because that's what is the future. The manpower will remain constant, but the efficiency of the same manpower with the exploitation of the equipment has to go 1.5 to 2 times. And that is what we are expecting from the industry to help us out, other than the exact hardware. However, we need to now move from experimentation to enterprise scale innovation, and the time is actually running short. The private sector in pharma and automobiles are set to invest nearly 10,000 crore annually in R&D, but the defense R&D lacks at approximately 100 to 200 crores only. Therefore, a gap that must close in if India is to design and deliver its own cutting-edge defense capability. Fourthly, the strategic partnerships. The bridge of opportunity. While R&D builds what we can create, strategic partnership expand what we can access. In a world of complex threats, no nation stands secure alone. Shared defense innovation is the strongest shield. Certain technologies will never come to us on a platter. Need is to collaborate under terms of shared benefits and local control. The shining examples are BrahMos and K9 Vajra. What is more important for any R&D's effort is from 0 to 1. Once it becomes from 0 to 1, from 1 to 100, it becomes that much easier because then it requires replication, modification, and upgradation. So that 0 to 1 is something we need to focus. If not, then we need to get it from somewhere outside. Fifthly, military-civil fusion. The troika of transformation. If strategic partnership reflects collaboration abroad, military-civil fusion must anchor it at home. I've often emphasized and re-emphasized it here again. There's the troika of academia, industry, and the military that must achieve deep cross-domain synergy. While academia innovates, the industry must incubate, and the military must imbibe these innovations. We in the Army have shared our innovations and are constantly reaching out, sharing concepts, outreaching through our coordination agencies, onboarding ourselves in national technology missions, making equipment and ranges available to the industry, funding startups. We are doing a lot and we'll be happy to do more. And finally, the passion. Between imagination and implementation lies the passion, the force that gives life to ideas. A mission mode, no rest till we reach approach will be needed for maybe next 10 to 15 years. Only then we'll be able to put in place a resident architecture which will enable us to think ahead, with pioneering concepts, and also have the means to test and implement them. So what are we doing about it? If I can just summarize certain issues or the initiatives, for transforming vision into value, we have declared Decade of Transformation. We have 5 pillars, that is force restructure, modernization, jointness and integration, system process functions, and of course the HR upgrade, that the human resource upgrade, are being concurrently provided impetus or nudge as applicable. If I can say that the academia and industry playing a major role in it. Ensuring synergized research and development with Troika, whether it's a ASMI weapon or drone manufacturing. Our 2.5-front challenge and post-op Sindoor empowerment in terms of financial empowerment which we have got is giving us more flexibility for spiral development and induction. Same with spiral evolution of the new structures. Lot many times people used to say that, what do you want, tell us. Now we have created this structure and we are looking for the equipment, but the equipment will take its own time. So we are going in for phase 1, phase 2, but we have created this structure so that the industry is aware that what is the overall requirement, the academia is aware that what is the overall research and development requirement. We have created organizations like Rudra, Shaktiban, Divyastra, Bhairav, Ashni, and many more will follow. So what it means, it's already there in the media what it means, but the requirement of equipment is something which we need to jointly work out. Years of technology absorption, 24-25 allowed us to prepare human resource and develop ecosystem for technology upgrade. Capitalizing on this success, years of 26 and 27 are now being declared as years of networking and data centricity. And here, again, the academia and industry can play a major role. We are harnessing dual-use technology and creating convergence by adapting or constantly modifying technology itself and the TTPs, that is techniques, tactics and procedures, and drone warfare is a live example to it. We are already associated in a big way with national technology missions of quantum, space, 6G, etc. for a very collaborative approach. So as a military, we are convinced that for us to succeed, it is imperative to help others. That is imperative to help others to succeed, as in a collaborative environment and whole of nation approach, 2 plus 2 must make it to 22. So in conclusion, the future of war fighting will not be defined by any single domain or doctrine, but by how decisively we convert ideas into enduring capabilities. Our journey from concept to capability is in truth a journey from dependence to dominance, from preparing for the future to possessing it. For all the leaders in this hall, including me, concepts inspire us, capabilities protect us. It is the leadership which ensures that one becomes the other. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Lots to unpack there from General Dwivedi's speech. We'll try to match up with what he said. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. General Dwivedi, Nitin Gokhale, and friends. You know, the world isn't seeing a third world war, but I think the world is at war. And what we are seeing is something that we've not seen in the 21st century. We've seen the largest conflict in the 21st century, which is going to enter its 5th year in 2026, the Russia-Ukraine war. And that's kind of redefined the way conflicts are fought. We were told that wars of attrition would be a thing of the past. The Russians have proved it otherwise. The Ukrainians proved that there are no pushovers. And then you have Israel and Hamas and Israel and Iran and Israel and the Houthis and Israel and so many other non-state actors. So this is like truly the age of conflict. It is the era of change. It is the revolution in military affairs. And what we are seeing right now with all of these capabilities, all of these wars, is an RMA of the kind that we last saw in 1991 with the Gulf War, when you saw the Tomahawk missiles hitting very precisely. That was the last RMA that we saw. And now we are seeing another RMA with hypersonic weapons, with AI, with autonomous weapon systems, and of course drones. And this is truly a path-breaking moment that we are living through. And at the same time, while we are talking about multi-domain operations, you heard General Dwivedi speak about multi-domain operations, and of course that how the Indian Army is going to absorb technology. It is the decade of transformation for the Indian Army. It is the year of technology absorption. And you know what struck me is that while he was speaking, my thoughts were out of the borders, because the Indian Armed Forces have launched one of their largest exercises in recent years. You have the overhang of Operation Sindoor. That's been on 6 months back. That operation continues. So I think the time to talk about this technology absorption is over, and now it is we must go from concepts to reality. We must actually go to execution now. And I think, we are reached a point when the enemies at our doorstep, and in our case, in India's case, we have a very unique situation where we have the prospect of two nuclear-armed countries at our doorsteps, and both are in a collusive relationship. So this two-front war that we spoke about in the past, we saw it very recently becoming one front, right? So that is the kind of challenge that India is facing, and to reform in the face of this kind of challenge, where you have the forces on the one hand engaged in live combat, literally they are in ops mode all the time. To carry out reforms is going to be extremely difficult. Very few other countries have done the kind of transformation that we are attempting in a very short span of time. But I have with me a very esteemed group of panelists who are experts in their field, in AI, in drones, in ammunition manufacture, and they're going to lead us through this decade of transformation that General Dwivedi mentioned, what the Indian Armed Forces really need to do, what are the structures that we need to modify, how do we bring change in. And I'm going to start by asking Ashok ji. Mr. Ashok Atluri and me have been talking for many years, and he started talking about counter-drone systems before drones were the thing. I want to ask you this, Mr. Atluri, the fact that drones are the big thing, right? You're looking at the Russia-Ukraine war, where one estimate suggests that 80% of casualties on the battlefield have been caused by drones. When you look at the Indian drone ecosystem, what are the missing pieces that you see over here? And how can India become a drone superpower of the way that other countries have become? Russia and Ukraine are two countries which have possibly the largest expertise, the most expertise in drones. How do you see us becoming a drone superpower? What do we need to do?
I think the way we can become, in any field, forget about drones or anti-drones or, AI, is actually working very hard to implement very sincerely the Buy Indian IDDM route. In the sense, so for example, now emergency procurement has gone, they suddenly went Buy Indian, which should have been Buy Indian IDDM. So why, this is a letdown in the sense that, companies that have worked on developing the capabilities for many years have suddenly, now they have to compete with foreign guys who somebody they come and do. So this capability is at risk today. So the way to really build superiority in any capability is identify those companies that have the capability and keep giving them orders. And don't try to second guess them every time, in the sense that how will they compete with, if you want not India best, you want these guys to be making world's best because you're fighting wars, not within India. So my worry is that there are companies, again, these capable companies are very rare, Sandeep. I mean, they are not available, very easily available. I mean, I would say maybe 100 or 120 of these companies are there in India at this point in time. They should be treated like national strategic assets. They should be nurtured, given order, and ensured. Because, a lot of people say, I'll give you money, do R&D. But R&D is actually some kind of a genetic thing. It's in the DNA of the company. If you want to give a trading company money and say, do R&D, I hear a lot of things where, people say that, we want to do R&D, but your government has to give money. In fact, when we proposed, make two, we said, we don't want your money. We are willing to invest the money, but please give us guaranteed orders. So that was kind of a taken, everybody was taken aback. Why is 100, why will industry fund 100%? Because that is, we can do the R&D, fund ourselves, but the paperwork involved from taking the money from the government is much more headache for us than actually making the product. So again, to your question, to have these capabilities, it should be IDDM companies, go whole hog, give them orders, and ensure that they have become not only the best in India, but the best in the world. Because this is again, there's a virtuous cycle. When you give to a R&D company some money, they do more R&D on that. They don't try to go and buy, which a typical trader would do, spend or something. But this is what the most part is, that, we have to identify these companies and treat them with respect and, and then keep giving them orders. Don't try to second guess them, get some competition from abroad. And sometimes this also happens that they say, listen, we have this very good technologies, we have 3 or 4 players in the world. But here we have some kind of resistance, even though it is there enshrined in the by Indian IDDM, there's a single vendor now, Jai. Come on, there will be a single vendor. If you want world best, there will be only one company. And you want 2 or 3 in India? No, that's not done. So I think that's my viewpoint.
So it's basically you're suggesting something like a mini Ratna category be created for chosen IDDM companies that have demonstrated excellence.
Yeah, so I don't know, Mini Ratna, this kind of almost looks like that you're trying to capture or do a regulatory capture. But I'm saying again, when we talk about regulatory capture, crony capitalism, that is just you are trying to capture the regulations and trying to do. But here this is innovation proven, and these guys are exporting to the world. Come on, how much do we really need to prove till you start giving the?
So what you're saying is basically that the Indian government should do for the private sector, for the Indian private sector, what all the P5 countries have done for their private sector companies when they were in the path of...
No, actually, there used to be a fight, where, we want to buy the best for India, and, I would buy from a foreign source also. But the Israeli leader Netanyahu once famously said, if my industry has 60% capability, I'll buy from my industry. I will not buy the best one, because he knows that if I buy, they're going to reinvest and become #1 in the world. And that approach has created the capabilities.
I've heard a very interesting line from someone. I've heard a very good line on that from someone in the forces where he said exactly what you said, that teda hai par mera hai. That is the line he's used for an Indian company. But Ashish, I want to come to you. And I met Ashish many years back at a coffee shop in Defense Colony where he was trying to sell very advanced bulletproof jackets to the Indian Army. And this was a long time back. Ashish, what was it, 15 years back?
Yeah.
And he couldn't understand why the army didn't want to buy something that was so state-of-the-art. He was actually exporting it to foreign countries. I think you had a lot of foreign vendors before you had started selling it here. So, I mean, it is businessmen like Ashish who just got very big contracts today from the government of India. He's executed a, $100 million order for personal protection gear.
Yeah.
One of the largest, I think,
Yes.
of all time, right? I mean, that basically tells you how far we have come from the past, where Indian businessmen were kept out, and today you're back in the system. But, just to borrow a line from political lexicon, Ashish, there's this double-engine sarkar that the government uses, political parties use for the... Here you have a double-engine sarkar as well. You have the PSUs, you have the private sector. Do you believe that the government the defense ministry is actually firing on both engines now? Or do you still feel there is a lot of room for improvement when you're in the private sector and you're still being treated as an outsider?
See, there's always a scope for improvement. So you can always say, dil mange more. But the point is, it's high time we start collaborating with each other. It's high time PSUs and private industry collaborate with each other, because that's what will bring out the best from both. It's we are into ammunition manufacturing. Today we start reinventing the wheel, start recreating the facilities which exist already. It's a national wastage. It will take us more time to introduce the more precision ammunition. It will take us more time to come back to that level. Whereas if we today collaborate with the PSUs, the time to market will become much shorter. The armed forces will get the needed weapons much faster. And it's a win-win situation for even the PSU, because they would have a sustainable model where they are able to have us also as one of their customers for certain items, or collaborate with us and produce some things which they have not been able to. So it's high time we have to look at a collaborative approach. We have to look at a whole nation approach where we say, yes, let's work together to create these setups.
Is it happening? I mean, has it happened? Because I'm fond of saying that I've been in Delhi for about 20 years now. I've covered the defense beat for that long, and Nitin Bhai will bear me out. I have seen more change in the last 5 years than I have seen in the previous 15 years. I mean, the rate of change is incredible, right? And Do you see that same thing happening in the last 5 years? Is the
I-
government more responsive today?
Absolutely. I give a credit to the leadership at the political level, leadership at the armed forces level. There's a sea change in the mindset. In fact, today morning itself, I won't name it, but we had a meeting where we were actually talking about this partnership itself. And there's a
Public-private partnership.
yes, and there is two years ago at the Ammo India conference, I had first introduced this thought that let's look at it in this manner. And the then vice chief appreciated the fact, and we started discussions on this. And today we were actually sitting and talking, how do we create one? So it's no longer a thought process that should we create one or not, but it's now coming to a point where how do we create one?
Right.
So definitely there's a lot of change which has happened. It has taken time, but I think once we break a few stones here, things will start rolling.
Things will start rolling indeed. And, I was reminded about this artificial intelligence Sarjan. You're a AI evangelist yourself. And, some time back, if you ask somebody here in Delhi what AI meant a few years back, they would say it meant Air India, right? So today we've come a distance. Now we've seen these conflicts where AI has been very, very key, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, you're looking at autonomous weapon systems, and also in Israel, in the Israel-Hamas war, you saw targeting systems being used, AI targeting being used. Where are we on the AI absorption thing with the Indian military? We've seen great schemes being launched by the government. There is AI schemes launched as far back as 2019. Where are we on AI absorption into the Indian military, into the defense ministry?
Firstly, thank you very much for having me, and I just wanted to thank the Chief for some very insightful remarks. I do feel slightly uncomfortable basis what we've just heard representing a foreign OEM, but with that caveat, I will try and answer the question. I've been particularly encouraged, it must be said, over the last couple of years with how forward-thinking and how futuristic the thought process, the planning, the awareness has been obviously across the political leadership, but much more importantly at the level of all three service HQs. Shield AI is committed to an India-first approach to our international partnerships, which is why India is the only place that we've already executed a comprehensive transfer of technology to establish local production. And then our core AI product, HiveMind, again, is in the process of being localized. And the great news, and I think particularly encouraging news, has been the almost immediate pickup on the critical need for a unified battlefield intelligence or battlefield AI platform. And to answer your question directly, without again getting into specifics, all three of the Indian Armed Forces are very seriously and very maturely exploring the details necessary to be able to start to deploy true artificial intelligence on the battlefield. And that said, since you mentioned the impact of AI on the battlefields of Ukraine or Gaza, I would caution everyone to say we have not even seen the tip of the iceberg as far as the actual implementation of AI in battlefield systems is concerned. You're seeing a little bit of application at the level of kind of automated find, fix, track, detect, and then you're seeing a lot of application across sensor systems. But the deployment of true edge intelligence that generates effectively autonomous behaviors at the level of entire platforms. And since this discussion is meant to be about multi-domain application, I'll just call out across air, land, sea, and space. The real sort of transition that the world is now seeing, and again, we're at the beginning of it, is to move from remote piloted systems to truly autonomous systems. And then one of the key sub-questions within that is, where does the human on the loop or human in the loop process remain when you have truly autonomous systems? I'm very encouraged by the conversations that we've managed to have as SHIELD with government. It's obvious to me that this is an enormous moment, an enormous opportunity for India, because we faced historically for the last 75 years resource constraints, technical constraints, and a sense of the limits rather than the possibilities of what we're able to do as a nation. For the first time in this RMA, in this revolution in military affairs, it is software that is going to be key. It is going to be AI knowledge and understanding that's going to be key. And we're seeing hardware platforms moving categorically from large, exquisite $100 million, $200 million platforms in relatively small numbers to, again, because of AI, the ability to deploy enormous numbers of relatively inexpensive platforms. Both of these trends, one, the importance of software as a category, and two, the fact that we're moving towards relatively inexpensive platforms being deployed in large numbers, offers an enormous opportunity for India once again to sort of leapfrog generations in technology, as we've done with mobile telephony, as we've done with computing, and effectively become a global leader as far as this post-human, post-modern battlefield is concerned. We have the necessary ingredients, we have the necessary raw human talent and potential, and based on everything I've heard today and previously, I think government's policies are now becoming more than facilitative to make sure that the indigenous systems are supported and we attract the world's best to come and partner with India in order to help generate the self-reliance. The last comment that I'd make is Atmanirbharta, I don't think can be achieved through mere stubbornness to say the answer is to just focus on local producers. It can only be achieved and it can go from a mere ambition to a reality if we figure out how to attract the best globally to come and make India their hub, their partner. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. Interesting aspects there, Sarjan, and you're talking about the RMA, and I couldn't help but think that one of our finest weapon systems, the BrahMos, actually came as a result of the Gulf War 1991. It's a very interesting story because our scientists saw the Tomahawks being used there and said that we don't have anything like this. Let's go to the Russians and get, work a JV with them for the BrahMos. And that's how the BrahMos came, and we saw the devastating use of the BrahMos in Operation Sindoor. But Mr. Atluri, I was talking about, we're talking about multi-domain operations, of course, but coming back to drones, you've seen the way drones have completely revolutionized the battlefield. Again, coming back to the Russia-Ukraine war, where the Russians are firing them in the thousands now. It started in the tens, then it went to the hundreds, and now they're firing drones in the thousands. And when I look around, there's a lot of procurement of drones across the services. Everybody is buying drones. But I don't see the massive drone production lines that we see in the other countries, like Russia, for instance. They have this massive production line in a place called Alabuga. The Chinese certainly have it. The Americans are looking at it, low-cost Shahed 136 type of drones. Do you see the need for standardizing this thing? While we are buying a lot of emergency procurements, short-term, because the forces need the capabilities today, is there a need for standardizing this onto one or more platforms where several industries can come in, exactly like the automobile revolution? You have a drone revolution, where you standardize on a couple of designs, multiple companies come in, and you produce them in bulk for the Indian services and also for export.
Yeah, I think, again, if you can really identify some vendors who you think are really doing incredible R&D, if you start placing the orders on them, either they create the manufacturing facility themselves, or they have tie-up with. We have a lot of manufacturing capability here. In fact, as Zen Technologies, we don't have much manufacturing capacity or capability with us. What we do is we develop prototype and do the engineering, and then we outsource it because there's a lot of manufacturing capacity. But when you talk about drones, or by the way, I'm into anti-drone systems more than drone, right. But counter-drone systems. But to your question, what is the capacity that we need is a full-fledged, multi-pronged war happening, yeah. And we are every day we are replacing that capacity. Right. So the government should actually go and say, listen, where is this capacity for me when a full-fledged war is going on? And and then they have to pay. Suppose somebody says, listen, my complete capacity is only 300,000 or something like that. They say, okay, here is the money for the 700,000, but you need a 1 million capacity. Right. So it has to be done proactively by the government. That's the norm everywhere else. So yeah, but again, I think the point here is, whether it is AI or anything, and when you're talking about multi-domain factors, if I don't own the IP, how do I integrate it across the thing? If I don't, we've seen pager, we've seen the Stuxnet, I don't own the code, I don't know what material is there, I'm sitting duck. I mean, in the time of war, my products will stop working. So it's absolutely necessary that, multi-domain, etc. Manufacturing capacity is one thing. I think government can really say, okay, this is the capacity, please build it, I'm going to do it. But actually, how do you ensure that deep inside the software, the algorithms will not work against me in a war? So that is very important, and that's again the IDDM concept was that indigenously designed, developed, when that happens, the armed forces actually go through your code. Is there anything hidden where they can harm us? And they see the electronic design, they look at the mechanical design, and only when they feel comfortable they allow us. So that's that's why it's a different ball game altogether. And if when IDDM is done, the manufacturing capacity is typically built. It can be achieved very easily.
Right, Ashish, you want to come in there? You're a drone manufacturer as well.
So I was just waiting for you to for that chance. Right. So very recently we've gone through a very stringent drone evaluation procedure, and I can assure you that at least the procedure we went through, the way the Chinese components was checked, I don't think you can have anything Chinese inside after that kind of procedure going through. The way the drones were evaluated in the terrains with the EW capabilities, it was actually amazing to see that, yes, that kind of evaluation is being done. Now, that's what needs to be standardized. That's something which needs to be done across the domains to make sure that whatever is being bought goes through that kind of a trial procedure. And then what you also need to do is, I wouldn't completely agree with Ashok that you select companies and just you side with them. I would say do a 60% with who started supplying you, give them orders, harness their potential, support them. But 40% you need to start looking for new talent on the market. You need to make sure you look for new startups, new MSMEs. You never know when one MSME becomes, or when one startup becomes a unicorn.
The Defense Ministry had something very similar a couple of years back, the Raksha Udyog Ratnas, RURs. But that fizzled out. I mean, was it because of the fear that they'll be creating monopolies in the private sector?
I think I agree with him in the sense that if you really keep harnessing these capabilities, and then you also keep some quantity for the because we want competition to be there, but fair competition to be there. But the one thing we should be not really again, this monopoly thing has been there forever. Right. And when Buy Indian IDDM was being introduced, a single vendor was put into that because the reasoning behind that was, listen, worldwide there are 3 or 4 manufacturers for the product. And how can we expect 3 manufacturers in India for that? It's the most foolish thing to say. So, the concept of in fact, what we should be thinking is, it's not monopoly, but can we create global leaders out of India? That they go and dominate. We are buying Microsoft, we are buying Apple, we are buying, but why not have our own Indian?
That will come in when you focus on Indian companies.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you should actually embrace if somebody is coming with extraordinary technology, and if he's a monopoly, he's a global leader candidate. Please go after him and do that.
Sarjan, you want to come in on that?
If I could, just on 2 issues that I heard. So one, I actually am in wholehearted agreement on this issue of monopolies, right? So 2 points that I'd make within that. One, the nature of the defense business is such that by definition your timelines are enormous. Right. Your R&D cycles are long dated. And your typical principles of the free market, therefore, may not actually be correctly employed. You do have negative externalities and you do need government intervention because you require long-term investment into R&D and at-scale manufacturing from the private sector. And the second element there that I'd mention is, of course, there's no resource exploitation going on, there's no capture of resources, etc. So I don't think that's a concern. But the thing that I think would really help is just an environment of predictability. As far as, for example, in this 2025 moment, I think the Indian Armed Forces do need to come up with a standardized taxonomy of unmanned systems that the Army will require or the Armed Forces will require over the next decade, across size, weight, power, mission context categories. publish that, make it clear to the Indian private sector, here's what we're looking at over the next decade, here's how we need capabilities to evolve and develop over time, and we need delivered capabilities at 40%, 60%, 80%, and eventually 100% over the next decade. That's all fine. But I think that the private sector would really benefit from predictability, as opposed to discovering that there's been scope creep or requirements creep by the time that first phase of R&D has been completed. Those are the 2 points that I wanted to make.
Right, absolutely. And you know, I'm afraid we're completely out of time. We just got about 5 minutes. I want to end this by asking all of you one suggestion from each of you on what we need to do to actually make multi-domain operations a reality, to go from concept to execution. Really, one suggestion from all of you. Ms. Atluri, beginning with you.
Yeah. I think, you know, focus on, identify companies with proven track record in R&D, and then if they have specific capabilities, start giving them orders with a timeline to evolve, you know, clear-cut multiple timeline. And again, you know, the IP ownership should be absolutely Indian controlled. There should not be something across domains. And, you know, and facilitate interaction between them. I think that is the fastest way, not only to become self-sufficient, but also become a global leader in that. But yeah, I think that should be.
Identify private sector champions.
Yes. And just, yeah, give them orders, especially for products that they have already proven. Right. You know, don't, I mean, again, we don't create be a buy Indian and start getting other guys. And, you know, I mean, you know, if I'm a foreign guy, I wouldn't want India to have capability because they're my biggest market. Right. I would underquote at any price. I'll take the order because I want them to. I want to kill that capability. So these are regular playbook things. But you know, but still we are. You know, I think we're getting trapped in that.
Absolutely, Ashish, you want to come in on one suggestion for the government of India, Defense Minister?
Identify technologies. Technologies are going to be the most potent weapon in any war of tomorrow. Identify the technologies, have these test companies with a smaller order. They're good. Work with them for larger orders while you look for next generation technology. So you have to progress with time. You've gone through EP, tested them with smaller orders. You've tested the product. They've delivered. Go with the bigger orders, and then in parallel look for next generation.
So identify technology, very important there. So identify the private sector champions, look for the technology. Sarjan, what's your suggestion?
I'd say it's really 3 things, and all 3 things really are for the government and the armed forces, because in our ecosystem, at the end of the day, private sector, academia, we're all, relatively speaking, unimportant compared to the single customer, right? I mean, it is the armed forces, it's the warfighter, it's MOD, it's political leadership. So really focusing on them. I'd say, as I said in my opening remarks, this is a huge opportunity to answer your question, what do we need? I'd say we need clarity, resourcing, and like a ferocious determination to actually hit the finishing line. And I'll unpack all 3. Clarity in terms of what do the Indian Armed Forces need today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Just achieve that clarity, achieve that focus, make it clear to every stakeholder in the ecosystem, this is the pathway, this is the plan, you don't need to invest in anything but this. So that's the clarity. Second, resourcing. At every stage of the company's life cycle, right? On a previous panel, I heard about loans needing to be taken by MSMEs. Equity finance is what they need. They don't need debt finance. So at every stage in that company or that product's life cycle, it is on government to make sure that appropriate resourcing is provided, whether it's an IDEX grant, whether it's creating a VC ecosystem that's defense focused, whether it's, you know, straight up R&D funding being provided by the government in exchange for some future orders, which a lot of our Western allies and partners do. So that's the second piece, resourcing at every stage. And then the third one, when I call it ferocious determination, I mean a real culture shift within MOD, within the armed forces to say, it's not enough to say, I've pushed the file along. It is on me to make sure that that procurement happens. It is on me to make sure that that R&D project is completed and a capability is actually brought to the field, right? So it's a culture shift. So clarity, what do we need? Resourcing, because as a nation, we can afford it now, that much is clear, and we have what it takes to be able to become, I think, world leaders over the next decade. And thirdly, this culture shift within government And one last comment, I think, on this question of culture shift, we really need to move away from mistrusting ourselves, right? Private sector mistrust, government mistrust, academia, and instead just recognize we're all kind of in this together. We will fail. There will be moments where, less than the desired outcome has been achieved, but it's all a part of the process.
Right. Very interesting suggestions there, Sarjan. So clarity, resourcing, and what was the third aspect that you mentioned? Determination. Get the file to the finish line, get the capability, get the product. So thank you very much, gentlemen. You've just heard it from the best in the business here, and I think we've given General Mann a lot to think about. I did see him take down notes there. But thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts, gentlemen. I'm afraid we are completely out of time. We don't have time to take questions, but my esteemed panelists will be there to speak with you after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our keynote speaker, Chief of the Army Staff General Dwivedi, and our panelists for a fascinating discussion on the evolution of doctrines and integration of technology and jointness in modern warfare. I request our founder and editor-in-chief, Mr. Unnithan Gokhale, to present mementos to our keynote speaker, moderator, and panelists. A memento to our keynote speaker, General Dwivedi. Careful. To our panelist, Mr. Ashok Atluri. To Mr. Ashish Kansal. To Mr. Sarjan Shah. And our moderator, Mr. Sandeep Unnithan. I request all of you to please stand together for a group photograph. We have 2 more knowledge sessions to go, and then the launch of the book on Bharat Shakti's 10-year journey and the fireside chat with the CDS. I think you'll all agree it's time for a short tea break. So let's proceed to the kiosk area, have a cup of tea or coffee. I will see you back here in 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, to manage the time. Thank you so much.